right, we're on to part 16 of On the River Gran among the Quadi. So this one's an itemized list with 5 points. And so he first says, the human soul degrades itself. And now we get into the list. Firstly, above all, when it does its best to become an abscess, a kind of detached growth on the world, to be disgruntled at anything that happens is a kind of secession from nature, which compromises the nature of all things. Secondly, so the human soul degrades itself when it turns its back on another person or sets out to do it harm, as the souls of the angry do. The human soul degrades itself when it is overpowered by pleasure or pain, when it puts on a mask and does or says something artificial or false. Then lastly, when it allows its actions and impulse to be without purpose, to be random and disconnected. Even the smallest things ought to be directed towards a goal, but the goal of rational beings is to follow the rule of law of the most ancient of communities and states. This one's pretty good, I think. So the human soul, you degrade yourself when you become an abscess, a detached growth on the world. To be disgruntled at anything that happens is a kind of cessation from nature. So I think these are people who he's speaking, I think, to people who don't have any ambition or drive or desire to fulfill their own destiny, and they just accept a mundane, go with the flow life, and just live day to day without very much purpose at all. And not only that, but they do that, and then it's not like there's a piece there where like they secretly wish they would have done that. I imagine that's what I mean, because then they're disgruntled at anything that happens, and then doing so kind of infringes on other people. Not really infringes on them, but just provides friction on the natural way of things, of other people doing what they want to do with their. And I can imagine, though, the only reason they'd be disgruntled at that is because perhaps there's jealousy or envy or anger that these other people are out living a fulfilling life, or at least a life that's more fulfilling than the one that these people are living. And so while there's nothing inherently wrong with just wanting to have a mundane life, I mean, if you're listening to this, I can't really see you doing that personally. You're out pursuing knowledge, higher philosophy, ways of being. That in and of itself is not just a mundane life. Because he is kind of shitting on people here a bit, but it seems to be to. I don't personally really know many people that are like this. Probably just for the fact that if I did think someone was like that, I probably didn't hang out with them again and have forgotten about them. But just, people go to work maybe just to get enough money to put a roof over their head and buy some smokes and liquor and go about their day. And maybe for some people that's fulfilling and that's what they want in life. And this probably wouldn't be so much directed at them, but it's this piece where they get disgruntled and angry at the world. So it's people who go live either a simple or boring or mundane life. And again, these are my, I wouldn't want to live the same day over and over and over again. Some people do, and they like a simple life, and there's nothing wrong with that. Insofar as what Marcus is saying here, they don't then go get pissy when other people don't follow what they've done, or when they're being outperformed, or like less status, etc. So it's a combination of the two that he's saying is the issue, or is that's when this human soul really begins to degrade itself, when you're in that position of wanting to do more or wanting a better life, but then doing nothing about it, and then being angry at people who are. That's degrading to the soul. That's what he's getting at. Now we'll get into the second point. When the soul turns its back on another person or sets out to do it harm, as the souls of the angry do. So this is kind of in line with that first piece. Oh, excuse me. So, yeah, it sounds like acts of omission and commission, where you're doing harm either by doing nothing, either willingly, or maybe not omission, but an act of commission. Basically betraying or not helping out other people solely out of anger, and then, or just downright intentionally doing harm, getting in the way of things, trying to undermine other people. That action, and you can imagine a person who is doing that routinely, and the definition of routinely there can be quite subjective. Someone doing that all the time, we'd probably view them as angry, maybe like spiteful, maybe even dangerous, like untrustworthy. These are people who most people would agree don't want to be around them, and the person living in that shoes, in that state of mind, their soul is probably not very happy, and it's being picked away at and degraded, is what Marcus is saying. And so now the soul is degraded when it is overpowered by pleasure or pain. Excuse me, tired this morning. He's talking about hedonism there, and again, he's not talking about having a good birthday party and going all long, or a wedding or something. He's talking about someone that's just constantly pursuing pleasure day in, day out, and there was excerpts about that in the last couple pages, where it's almost a dangerous person, an untrustworthy person, as they might, if they're pursuing pleasure, absolutely. What are they going to do to continue that pursuit? And then, or pain. So certainly, like, living in a state of chronic pain is debilitating, and it can be very difficult to keep your motivation and your spirits up in constant pain. And it kind of goes against what he said in that past one, like everything is an impression. But pain is very real. And so there are these contradictions or holes in it in some places. Now, certainly someone in extreme pain could take an attitude of, despite this pain, I will try my best to be pleasant with the family that's here to look after me, or the caretakers that are around me, or an attitude of, damn this pain and damn this body, and I'm gonna, all that anger I have towards my circumstance, I'll put onto those around me. And so that's more of how the Stoics and like rational motive behavior therapy would view the healthy and unhealthy negative emotional side of pain. But pain can drive a person absolutely crazy, and whether it's severe physical pain, or severe emotional pain. A terrible breakup, or in the immediate moments and days and weeks after a severe loss, and that profound waves of grief. I don't know, grief can last a lot longer than that too. That pain, it can really take away from who you, I think when he says the soul, I think he's talking about, like your nature, who you are. You're not going to be your normal self if you're not going to be your normal self, nor likely your ideal and preferred version of yourself when you're succumbed by pain or extreme pleasure. So the next one is the human soul degrades itself when it puts on a mask and does or says something artificial or false. I always ask clients when they say profound statements, or just statements about their life and about how they're feeling and their thoughts, and they'll say something, and what they did or what they're thinking, and I'll ask them, is that true? And it's one of the most powerful questions. I really love asking it, because a lot of people really are taken aback by it, and they'll often think, often it's, and then they'll catch themselves and be like, 90% of it is true. There's only a little bit of a lie, or a little bit of an embellishment, or a mistruth. And so when you say something that's artificial or false, even if you think you got away with it, you know what the truth is, and that part of you that's prideful and honest and loves yourself probably doesn't also love being a liar. And in that way, it's when you do a lie, even a little one, that part of you says, geez, like that doesn't feel very good, or I got away with it this time, maybe I can get away with it again. That would probably be the more lying side, that enjoys deceit, or gaining some advantage from lying, or a perceived advantage anyway. So don't lie. It'll degrade your soul and who you are. It's better to say nothing than to lie, unless saying nothing feels like lying, because sometimes it can. And more on that, if there's a truth that you believe is worth saying, to not say it is a form of, might not be outright lying, but it's a mistruth, or you're holding back and looking at, why am I holding back right now? Is it communication skills I need to work on? Is it my own assertiveness? Is it that I haven't fully thought this out? I expect a poor reaction. I think that this is going to be, as soon as I say this one thing, then I have to say 20 other things that have piled up for years, and that's going to cascade the dominoes all around me. Lots can go in there, but keep in mind that when you're not saying that, you're not being fully honest to yourself, and that will eat at you in time. It will always eat at you in time, and will get you. Now, lastly, the last point. When it allows, the fifth one. So the human soul degrades itself when it allows its action and impulse to be without a purpose, to be random and disconnected. Even the smallest things ought to be directed towards a goal. But the goal of rational beings is to follow the rule and law of the most ancient of communities and states. So the first part of it, like impulse to be without purpose, to be random and disconnected, I think that's kind of another way of what he's saying about this first the first point, um, when it becomes an abscess, when the soul becomes an abscess, a detached growth on the world, um, and now there isn't that angry component. Um, but he's just saying, don't be aimless and wander around and get up and go to work just to eat and go to work the next day, or go hang out with this person because it's easy and comfortable, but you don't really like them, but you're just going to do it because it's low effort. You can have some beers together, and you know that they're going to probably want to have beers again tomorrow too. That's kind of what he's getting at, I think. But now, if it's your goal to just do that is great, and there's nothing against that. But just doing it without purpose and intentionality, that's kind of the whole theme of most of these points. And I think in my life, like often before bed for an hour or two, I like to unwind with some video games and just simple distractions. I'll play the same games. I know what's happening. I know what to expect often, but it's simple. It's easy. It helps my mind relax, and so that's my goal, is relaxation and enjoyment, and that's my preferred method. But I try not to catch myself too often just playing because there's nothing else to do. It's normally to relax and kind of wind down for the day. But the goal of rational beings is to follow the rule and law of the most ancient of communities and states. I don't think he's talking about humans here, old communities and states. Or he is, and he's just pointing out the fact that how they lived was basically nature, when we were still small groups of tribes going around, and it was your family plus maybe 2 or 3 other families, and everybody was related and cousins. And we would just, you'd get your lot for the day and wake up the next day, and everybody was in your present moment, but everything had a purpose, and it was rather simple, like helping out each other, looking after each other, doing mostly productive things. The concept of leisure. At this point in time when he's writing, they would have had that, but I highly value leisure personally, but I think that's what he's not getting at, do what your grandparents did in some kind of conservative fashion and don't question anything, these ancient communities and states. But, think back to when we were kind of first becoming human, or, well, I guess had been, but before all of these societies and maybe even agriculture. I think he's going back farther than that, if he even had an understanding of that, really. Back when, hard work would be rewarded, being kind, being funny, smart, being angry all the time and at the world wouldn't really be appreciated in the community. These things, I think, is what he's getting at, and not to just live. It's only really with today's modern luxuries we're able to. You can completely use up your whole life doing almost nothing that you want to do, but you can get by and have a roof over your head and eat and survive, but you're not really living. I think that's what he's getting at here. Way back when we had no choice but to be alive and aware and doing things with intentionality because we didn't have the resources or ability to waste time. And he's not saying that some leisure and enjoyment is a bad thing here, but not to make the ratio of mindless surviving too high in your life, such that you don't live your life, I think is what he's getting at. But with that said, yeah, that's the end of that one. Thank you for listening.